Oh, that's down near the Coromandel, as most likely anyone that's listening knows. Um, we're in the vehicle, and we're going to continue Srila Prabhupada's introduction to Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Uh, we'll just chant a little short Jai Radha Madhav, just to give us a little bit of connection to the spiritual sound vibrations to be continued in the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jam Vishnu Pada Paramahansa Paribraj Kacharsha Astu Tarasati Srimad His Divine Grace Sabai Charanaravinda Bhakta Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Gaura Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sisi Radha Krishna Gogopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Mathura Brindavan Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, I will follow my usual um, way of presenting here. I'm just going to pick up where we were yesterday. Ananda Prabhu was presenting yesterday, and then I'll continue into what Srila Prabhupada has to say for today. So, Vedic knowledge is not a question of research. Srila Prabhupada's already, we've discussed the cow dung. Vedic knowledge states that if one touches the stool of an animal, one must take a bath immediately. And it also says that cow dung is pure. So how is that possible? So it's not a question of researching to understand, although research can confirm statements of the Vedic literatures, but we should have faith in the Vedic literature's statements, and we'll find in due course of time that everything will be perfect. So Vedic knowledge is not a question of research. Our research work is imperfect because we are researching things with imperfect senses. We have to accept perfect knowledge which comes down, as is stated in Bhagavad-Gita, by the Paramparas, disciplic succession. We have to receive knowledge from the proper source in disciplic succession, beginning with the supreme spiritual master, the Lord himself. Very important point to understand that. So many, but that's one to understand. The original spiritual master, spiritual guide, teacher, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. In the succession coming from the Supreme Lord is there only to give us the original teachings or information from the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, and handed down to a succession of spiritual masters. Arjuna, the student who took lessons from Lord Sri Krishna, accepts everything that he says without contradicting him. One is not allowed to accept one portion of Bhagavad-Gita and not another. No, we must accept Bhagavad-Gita without interpretation, without deletion, and without our own whimsical participation in the matter. The Gita should be taken as the most perfect presentation of Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is received from transcendental sources, and the first words were spoken by the Lord himself. The words spoken by the Lord are called Apurushaya, meaning that they are different from words spoken by a person of the mundane world who is infected with 4 defects. A mundaner, number 1, is sure to commit mistakes. I was just reading Shyama Prabhu's book last night, the 3rd volume of Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, and he said that was one of the most profound things in spending so much time with Srila Prabhupada. He said he never made a mistake. A mundaner is sure to commit mistakes. To err is human, Prabhupada quotes. 2, is invariably illusioned. 3, has the tendency to cheat others. A simple example, if you've got to half an apple, I don't know if you'd have to do it these days, but if you have to cut an apple in half, the tendency is to, if you've got to share it with someone, is to give the smaller part to somebody else. It's just invariably there. The cheat tendency to cheat, more for me and less for something. And the 4th is limited by imperfect senses. Our senses are very limited and imperfect, don't have the ability to measure things very well. With these 4 imperfections, one cannot deliver perfect information of all-pervading knowledge. So there's something called Immaculate Perception, and we tend to think like that. And that's the biggest cheating, actually. We've got imperfect senses. We tend to be illusioned, become under illusion, invariably illusioned, commit mistakes. We always make mistakes, or not always, but pretty much, quite a lot. Invariably we're illusion. We have the tendency to cheat others, and our senses are imperfect, and yet we think that the way we see it, Atmavan Manyate Jagat, the whole world should see it the same way. And this is how we are in the conditioned life. So we think like that. I've got it down. I know exactly what's going on. I understand everything this way, and that's the only way it could be understood. But we cannot deliver perfect information of the all-pervading knowledge. So there's so much knowledge that lies outside the purview of our very limited sensual perception. So we should, instead of speculating and conjecturing, we should accept what is descending, what is being passed down. And that brings such a big point, a simple point really, but a major point, is that what is the origin of everything? Darwin and modern science are still clinging on to this idea that the origin of everything is very tiny and very material, and everything is coming from from that source. And the Vedic knowledge says that there is the supreme source of everything, is the supreme being, supreme personality of Godhead, Janmadasya Yataha, from which everything, he is the primeval cause of all, everything is emanating from that source. And descent is coming down, is manifest. And it's completely opposite to what the Darwinian concept is. So we're going to continue with Srila Prabhupada's introduction. He says, Vedic knowledge is not imparted by such defective living entities. It was imparted unto the heart of Brahma, the first created living being. Teni Brahma Ridaya Muyanti Yatsuraya. Teni Brahma Ridaya, like that. Is first imparted by the Supreme Lord to the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. Brahma in his turn disseminated this knowledge to his sons and disciples as he originally received it from the Lord. The Lord is Purnam, all perfect, and there is no possibility of his becoming subjected to the laws of material nature. Remember that material nature is very limited. It's very limiting as well. So the Lord does not come under that, or is not subjected to the laws of material nature, which dictate a limited ability according to the body, both gross and subtle. If you've got the body of a dog, then you have to bark and look for bones and carry on dog type activities. That you're dictated by the body. So Krishna is dictated by his body. So it's Satchit Ananda, unlimited bliss, eternality, and knowledge. So there's no limitation. It's actually unlimited, and quite different from the conditioned material body. That's the gross and the subtle. So the subtle body is there, and it dictates how one is limited by the material nature. One should therefore be intelligent enough to know that the Lord is the only proprietor of everything in the universe. What is that? Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam Savaloka Mahesh. All the Savaloka Maheshvaram. He is the controller of all the different planets in the universe. He is the original creator, the creator of Brahma. In the 11th chapter, the Lord is addressed as Prapitamaha, because Brahma is addressed as Pitamaha, the grandfather, and he is the creator of the grandfather. So no one should claim to be the proprietor of anything. One should accept only things set aside for him by the Lord as his quota for his maintenance. Ishavashamidam sarvam yatkincha jagat yam jagat chena chakchena bunjita makrita swidana. Everything animate and inanimate which is within this world is owned and controlled by the Lord. Therefore, one should only accept those things which are set aside as one's quota, and not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So this is a very relevant verse in all times, places, and circumstances, but especially when there's war going on that we know about. They say that there's many wars going on all over the world at different places and different times. We hardly hear about them, but we hear about the current war of Russia and Ukraine and stuff. So this whole idea is coming from the misunderstanding that things belong to us. Saeva Gokara. This is the thinking of an animal that thinks in terms of I and mine. So this is, I am this body and this belongs to me. Or it belongs to us, this group of people. We are these bodies, we are this country, And these things belong to us, but did they belong to you 50 or 100 or 200 years ago? No, most likely not. Things are always shifting sands of time. It's always shifting. And the illusion is amazing. And we can think ourselves very self-righteously that, oh, um, we are the actual people, in the people that, just like the Pakeha in New Zealand, we've got the white men in New Zealand. They didn't belong here originally. Somehow or other, they decided to hop on a boat and come over from here to everywhere. And then people who were living here, and I think, again, historically, even Maori, as far as I understand, there was another group of indigenous people, and the Maori, when they arrived, they chased them out. And it goes on and on and on and on, and it doesn't end. So the peace formula, Srila Prabhupada says, Bhoktaram Yaganatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatbamam Shantum Rishyati. That is, what is that? It's Bhagavad-Gita, obviously, but Bhoktaram, what, I'm trying to remember the number of the verse. Bhoktaram, I am the benefactor of the everyone. Bhoktaram Yagnatapa, Sarvaloka, I'm the controller, supreme Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Suridam Sarva, I'm the well-wishing friend of everyone. And again, back to the Sri Upanishad, it says that everything is set aside. So we have to understand, people ask that question, well, how will I know what's set aside? What's my quota? I mean, my quota is as much as I can grab hold of. No, that's not what's meant. What is set aside as one's quota is what will be sustainable. We hear all the time that people are searching for a sustainable society, a sustainable world, reducing carbon emissions and this and that, and pollution in so many different ways. But by making different laws, it will not make the desired effect or change, because the heart is still impure. So we talk about trying to purify the water and the air and the land and so on. It's become contaminated. So the purification has to happen in the heart, to understand that I should accept whatever is there, set aside as my quota, and not be continually driven on to have more and more and more, because dusparena nalena cha, it burns. This desire, material desire, is like a fire, and it burns. And the more fuel you give to that fire, then the more it will burn bigger and bigger and bigger. There's no end to it. So we keep making adjustments, and we think, yeah, well, come on. It's colder here in this country than places like India, where you could live very simply. So we have to have more facility. Okay. And then you create something a bit more than a small hut. But then are you satisfied? No. We want something more and more and bigger and bigger. And we see people, isn't it the case? I've mentioned this many times. You go into the rural areas and you see traditionally that farmers and stuff, they had very simple dwellings. They're very simple dwellings. Something they could afford. There might have been what they could, set aside as their quota. But we see all over the place, we have to have bigger and bigger houses. A man's house is his castle thing. We think we're kings and we have our queens and our little princes and princesses, but this is an illusion. That's not actually the business of human form of life, to think more and more, to puff ourselves up more and more, because we don't realize it doesn't bring satisfaction. It just goes on, and there's no end to it. And what dissatisfaction does it bring? Because there's countries producing all of these items that we are, materials and facilities that we quote unquote enjoying. So it creates an imbalance. And what happens is it comes around to bite you. Those countries, they're trying to get ahead, and you will find, without getting hopefully too political, the Chinese people will come and drop in and say, hey, you guys have been exploiting for so long, and we need more space. because we happen to produce all this stuff for everyone all over the world. So we thought we'd drop by and take over your country. And this country's trying to take over that one. So this is the struggle for personal advantage. This is modern life. And this is life in the material world, more or less. As Kali Yuga goes on, it becomes more of a struggle. And Srila Prabhupada says it's a struggle for survival, but no one survives. We don't realize that our mortality is built in, whether you're this species or that. Uh, uh, you belong to this country or that country. Mortality is built in. So we would do far better if we could have a government that guides us, and that's the whole purpose of Chaturvarnya Maya Srishtam Gunai Karma Vibhagasa. Krishna says, I've created this system where those who have clear sight through literature like Bhagavad-Gita and hearing from Krishna and his bona fide representative like Srila Prabhupada, we will get the real idea of what is the human form of life. It's meant for inquiring Atato Brahma Jignasa. It's meant for inquiring, who am I? What am I? What is this world that I'm existing in? And what is the game plan? What is the purpose of it? To get up each day and go through life and get up and down and up day after day. What is the purpose of this? And why is it that everyone has to die? No one seems to want to die. So these are the questions of a human being pondering. What is there out there? I look up into the sky and I see last night there was a clear sky. And there's so many stars and planets, and there's a sun and a moon. How did this all come in? Like that, inquiring. That is human form of life, more or less. So there's meant to be this system of guidance, and that is Bhagavad-Gita can give that guidance. I mentioned before also Srila Prabhupada in India, when he was setting up the Juhu temple, the governor came and said to him, oh, you're doing such a great work, and we want to assist you to build your temple. Srila Prabhupada was so much wanting that the whole world could gain from this. He said, actually, I mentioned that before too, we can guide you. You are the governor. And now let us make your state the first state in India, and then the whole of India can follow your example. And then the world can follow the example of India, living just like Gandhi. Gandhi had that good idea, but he also didn't know too much about Bhagavad-Gita and how to apply Bhagavad-Gita. But he did have some good ideas that Srila Prabhupada very much appreciated, and that was the village system. Village system was there, self-reliant, self-sufficient, producing your own cloth, producing your own food, living simply. Why? Because you're going to die. You're going to die in a few years. What's the point? And sense gratification can't be increased. It's already settled up. Your past karma dictates. So even in a small village, someone will be the chief person in the village, someone will be not so wealthy or well. It's always going to be there. So rather than struggling to gain something which is not really, you're not supposed to really have according to your past karma, the Brahmins would give guidance, and the Kshatriyas would make sure that the Vaishyas were not exploiting the general mass of people. That cheating propensity is built in for the Vaishya, so the Kshatriya has to what would you say, temper it, has to make sure that the Vaishya takes a profit, but not too much profit. Why? Because it will create an imbalance. And it will create unhappiness for the general people. So the mood is not one class exploiting another, but it is one class protecting another. I'll say that again. The business of society is that different types of people are supposed to protect each other, not exploit each other, which is our modern experience. So those in the highest level of Brahman realization, the Brahmanas, are not supposed to become super proud and puffed up, but they're actually supposed to be the humble servants. And out of their humility, they give guidance and all areas of life, how to live in this world. And the Kshatriyas are very powerful, but they use their power, their clarity of thought and direction to protect the citizens. And to be a Kshatriya, you don't just become a big fighter. You may have to fight, but you have a big heart. Your heart is being purified by the association of the Brahmanas. And they're also pure-hearted. Raja Rishis. Rajas, the kings, but they're Rishis also. So they also have to know the Vedic literatures like Srimad Bhagavad-Gita and Bhagavatam. But because their tendency is that they're very powerful, they have to be guided by the Brahmans, who are detached from everything. They were not interested. Oh, the king says, oh, you're the Brahman. I'll build you a big house like me. No, no, don't do that. I'm not interested. I'm only interested in Brahman, the supreme Param Brahman, the supreme personality of Godhead. That is their business. So therefore, they live very simply. And the people are gain faith when they see that. They see, oh, this person or these persons are living very simply. They're so exalted and so pure-hearted, and they don't want anything of this world. They live very simply in this world, and they seem to be always focused on spiritual activities and cultivation of spiritual knowledge and disseminating and giving that knowledge in different ways to the different classes of people in society. So it's a society of trust. Srila Prabhupada spoke of love and trust. First, you have to trust before you can love. So the trusting is there, and it has to be real. So the trust is built over time, and trust is lost over time also, when it is seen that the different personalities are not performing their duties. So the Brahminical class became, the beginning was Shringi, the little Brahmin boy who cursed Maharaj Pariksit. That was a misuse of such Brahminical power, Tejas. And then the Kshatriyas became more and more convinced that they should take charge. And then after a long period of kingly domains all over the world, and people became disgusted with them, they were not really caring for the people. They were only after their own, lining their coffers, so to speak. That's an old term, but filling their treasury at the expense of everyone else. And then the Vaishyas took over, and then the Shudras thought these Vaishyas, they're just exploiting everyone. And we see that now. Srila Prabhupada mentions there's two classes. There's the Sudra class, or the working class, and the mercantile class, and they're fighting out to see who can gain control. But this world, we cannot actually become satisfied in this world. No matter who gets the control, whether it's the working class, the mercantile class, it's the managerial, big managers class, or it's the intellectual class that wields the power. You can't be satisfied here. Therefore, we see the Shastras saying, one should accept only those things that are set aside for him by the Lord as his quota for his maintenance. Wow. Now, what a vision that is. Sometimes people say, oh, what's your vision? What a wonderful vision we have if we've got this vision. Ishavashamidam sarvam. Everything is owned and controlled by the Lord. Therefore, I'm interested to utilize, and so that all the people. So that's why Krishna says that we have to be the friend of every living being. Because then we will not be in an exploitive mood, and we will be able to have the temperature reduced from these. The temperature is running very, very high. You might not see that, but that's the case. We're feverish for material. Bhoga Aishvarya Prashaktanam Tayapa. Bhoga Aishvarya. In the minds of those who are attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. Bhoga and Aishvarya, material opulence and sense gratification. So it raises the temperature so much that people are practically forced to go to war. You make a a plan and you have a vision of what's desirable and achievable, and then the modes of nature. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvas ahankara vimudatma kartamiti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, considers himself to be the doer of activities which are actually carried out by nature. So that nature, once we've set the scene and pressed the button for the plan, then everything goes into motion and we're driven by the modes of material nature to try to achieve our desires. And the desires become more and more and more, and everything becomes not very good. So I'm going to pause there. I'll try this button. I'm going to press it now. If anyone has any reflections on anything that we've been discussing, then please feel free to put them in to that little chat box, and then I will attempt to see if there's something there. And I will press it just now, and my slow little phone might gradually catch something. So any reflections there about it being intelligent enough to know that the only proprietor of everything in the universe is the Supreme Lord. He is the creator. And he's Suridam Sarvabhutanam. He is the friend, well-wishing friend of all living being. So we have to develop that faith and trust in Krishna. And he says, Savadamam Paritu, abandon all kinds of occupational activities and surrender. Make your occupation connected to me. I will deliver you from all sinful reactions, all sufferings, all miseries that you're destined to suffer due to past activities. I'll deliver you. Don't be afraid. Masuchaha. Don't be afraid. So Krishna has that power to deliver us. And everyone else is talking, oh, vote for me, vote for me, vote for this party, vote for this party. We will deliver everything. We'll give you what you're after. And that is the cheating propensity. No one can actually give us shelter other than those persons who can guide us to come to the supreme shelter, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then as I just said that, I thought, people say, oh yeah, well that's just a lot of faith. You get so much faith. But again, it's just constantly begs that question that, yes, you may say that, but what is your faith? Everyone is bound by their faith. Everyone has some faith. And they think, no, I don't have faith. So how do you live your life? In a certain way, having some faith that, oh, science is yet to discover. No one knows that if there's a God or not. Be agnostic. And therefore, that's your faith. Your faith that science will discover or maybe not science. You say, oh, whether it's science or whatever, nobody knows. So in the future, somebody will find out. So that's your faith. You're placing faith that there's nothing guiding us in this existence. There's nothing other than hope. That's your faith. That it's hard to even construct such a faith, because as you've got that faith that there's nothing to guide you and it's just happening automatically, your days are going day after day. Yeah. So it's again, that's the biggest, I would suggest that's one of the biggest illusions, that even though we know that the world is temporary, we continue to think that I will exist. I think Maharaj Yudhisthira is quoted from that. The greatest thing that he experienced is, though we see everyone else is dying, we think we are going to continue. Although when we're asked, we'll say, no, that's ridiculous. I don't think that. But if we ask you, are you going to die? When? Oh, I could die really soon. When? Today? No, I don't think I'm going to die today. Maybe tomorrow. And if they say, yes, I could die today. Okay, you're going to die in the next hour or two? Because you said that you die today. Is it in the next hour? The next 5 minutes, you're going to die. This is how we chase it. We think we know. Pashyati na pashyati. We think we are understanding our existential position, but we don't understand a thing because we're not this body. We're not a Kiwi. We're not a Chinese man. We're not Indian American. We're not the body. And as soon as we accept the body, this is called a ahankara, a false ego, then so many illusions come from that. We become more and more caught up in it. We become attached to the body. We become attached to relatives, family, our wealth, our property, all of these things. In this way, we think in terms of I and mine just from that identification, misidentification with the body. So, we were just checking time. Where's the time on this thing? 9:36. Okay, so we'll read the next paragraph. There are many examples given. Sorry. Yes, there are many examples given of how we are to utilize those things which are set aside for us by the Lord. This is also explained in Bhagavad-Gita. In the beginning, Arjuna decided that he should not fight in the battle of Kurukshetra. This was his own decision. Arjuna told the Lord that it was not possible for him to enjoy the kingdom after killing his own kinsman. Sounds very reasonable argument from Arjuna, that how can I be happy if to gain what I'm desirous of, I have to kill my own brothers and cousin brothers and relatives, grandfather, gurus. Wow. So it's a very relative. Krishna, obviously, he begins to chastise Arjuna right from the beginning when he surrenders. I don't know, Prabhupada might say something more. Just in case I forget. Aso chanan baso chastvam prajnabadam shtabasase gatasum agatasu sumcha nanu sachanti pandita. While speaking learned words, Arjuna, you are mourning for that which is not worthy of grief. The wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So this was Krishna's first instruction to Arjuna when he said that, now I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. I'm bewildered. I don't know what to do. I'm really bewildered by this whole thing. My Gandiva bow is slipping from my hand. And he was overcome by compassion, actually. Prabhupada says he's very soft-hearted. Yeah, that's the interesting thing about Kshatriya. Kshatriya is very strong, powerful, big heart, courageous, but also soft-hearted. So that's the wonderful quality of the Kshatriya. He's very soft-hearted, actually, although very possibly ferocious and courageous and full of valor and so on. So it's a wonderful combination. So he's speaking in this way, but Krishna straight away he said, "You're speaking like a great learned person, but you're lamenting for that. You've come off the spiritual platform and you become pushed by the material platform." This decision was based on the body because he was thinking that the body was himself and that his bodily relations or expansions were his brothers, his nephews, brothers-in-laws, grandfathers, and so on. But, isn't that true? No, it's not on the absolute platform. And this is the position for the living entity. The living entity has to come to the absolute platform, the spiritual platform, because on the relative platform, he suffers again and again and again. So this is Krishna's business of Bhagavad-Gita, to take us from the mundane to the superlative spiritual platform. Therefore, he wanted to satisfy his bodily demands. So again, it can be very miserly, bodily demands, or it can be very huge and massive and virtuous and pious, but bodily is bodily. It's either gold or copper or iron or some other, they're all metals. So in a similar way, it can be very virtuous or very sinful, but it's still all material if we're on the material platform. Bhagavad-Gita was spoken by the Lord just to change this view. And at the end, Arjuna decides to fight under the directions of the Lord when he says, Karishe vachanam tava, I shall act according to your word. Which isn't easy, isn't it? It's not easy to change one's whole view and course, determined course of action. So it wasn't easy for Arjuna. And for all of us, it's similar. When we're faced with the reality of spiritual existence, it challenges us. I remember speaking at the loft maybe a year or two back, and that one lady, young woman, she said, I hear what you're saying and I really appreciate and it resonates with me a lot, what you're talking about. But actually, to make such a shift in my life it's very hard for me because I've suffered in so many different ways, and I could really get what she was saying. So it's a big challenge, and the tendency is to just stick our head back under the sand, just like it's said that the ostrich, big bird, big land bird, and it's said that it sticks its head under the sand when it's faced with imminent danger. But the bird's sticking out. You've got your head under the sand, but your whole body's sticking out. So the tendency is like that when we're faced with this challenge of moving from material to spiritual. So much so that Arjuna says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita. If I'm not successful on this venture of spirituality, then I may be like a riven cloud with no place in any sphere. I will no longer be materially properly situated, and I will not have achieved the ultimate goal of spiritual life. I'll be like a small cloud, a riven cloud in the sky with no position in any sphere. Again, very intelligent. The whole Bhagavad Gita is filled with divine intelligence and given by Krishna to Arjuna. Krishna says, yeah, even a little advancement on this path can protect one from the greatest fear. So we may not complete, although that was Prabhupada's mood. Many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples have explained like that. Srila Prabhupada's mood was that we complete our business of spiritual life, or not spiritual, that continues forever, but the of coming out of the material entanglement and going back home, back to Godhead. He wanted us to do it in this life. Trust no future, however pleasant it may seem. So he wanted us to do like that. But even a little advancement can protect us. And even if we only manage to get to 5% or 50 or 59 or whatever percent, then we begin in our next life in a wonderful situation where we're able to continue from that point. But the choice is always there. So trust no future, however pleasant, because you'll have to choose again. If we get to 50, for example, just a random figure, 59% or 90%, whatever, the choice will be there again. Just as in this life, we've chosen, we make choices to go to a certain level. So maybe we get to 50% of spiritual life. Well, next time we'll be given another situation and we can take off from there. But guess what? You still have to make the choice to go on to 51, to 59, to keep going to 100%. So better to keep making the choice in this life, because we do have a human form of life, guaranteed. We've got it. And we do have a bona fide scripture, Bhagavad-Gita, as it is. We have Srimad Bhagavatam. We have the process, the ninefold process of devotional service. We have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. We have everything going for us. So why not take advantage? So again, this is this balance of how to execute devotional service in a way which allows us to make steady progress. And that is the idea. Anukramishati, one verse in the third chapter of third canto, 25th verse, third canto, 25th chapter, 25th verse. It says that one should uh, hear the wonderful activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the association of pure devotees, because that will be very pleasing to the ear and satisfying to the heart. And by the cultivation of this knowledge in the association of pure devotees, through one gradually advances on the path of liberation. Thereafter, one becomes freed and one's devotional service becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. So this is the whole Anukramishati, step by step. The process is there. If we can keep that association, hearing Bhagavad-Gita as it is, associating with the great teachers through their writings, and associating directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of transcendental sound vibration through chanting Hare Krishna, and hearing the transcendental sound vibration of the Supreme Lord as given to Arjuna in Bhagavad-Gita. So we will become successful. Wherever there is Krishna and Arjuna, there is going to be morality and victory. Okay, so I think that's no, I see a little Shama item, but I can't. Okay, where is it? I think we got there last time, but couldn't find how to get that to open. Oh. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Okay, so we will finish there. I'm just trying to check where I've finished. 15. I shall act according to your word. I think that's it. Yeah. Karishe vachanam tava. I shall act according to your word. So, yeah, that we can join Arjuna and say the same thing. Karishe vachanam tava. I shall act according to your words. And Krishna's words are many. And he says, always think of me. Man manabhava bad bhakto majajimam namaskaro. Always think of me, become my devotee, offer your obeisances to me. Thus you will come to me, I promise you this, because you're my very dear friend. And we will become a dear friend of Krishna as well. Krishna is always our friend, but we have to reciprocate that loving friendship and pick it up again, realizing that there's no benefit from anything in this material world. There's nothing to gain and there's nothing to be lost in this world. We have nothing to do with this material world. Somehow we made a mistake a while back and we've been traversing here for quite some time. Okay, we're going to end at that point. Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki Jai. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari. Hari Bol,